All right, sorry I am not here again. Um, Today you're going to be watching a video on vertical shifts. I have your homework here with all the answers posted, and most of the work is worked out there. For those of you that were absent, I did email you the notes and the key. Um, if you have questions, I would ask some of your classmates and see if they can answer them for you. If not, I will answer them when I get back. Just a reminder, your guys' test is on Friday of this week. Um, so Wednesday will be our review day, so be prepared for that. Okay, so here are the answers to questions 1 and 2. Um, if you need to pause the video to make sure you got everything right, please do so. Here is 3 and 4. Make sure you're remembering that if it is a positive here, it is negative there for your C, and that the negative in front does indeed flip our graph. Those are things to make sure you are being aware of. And then here is 5 and 6. Okay, so in this video, I'm going to be talking to you about vertical shifts, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's moving the graph up and down. So for our general form of our sine equation, it's going to be y equals a sine of b x minus c plus d. We've already talked about A and B and C. You got to still continue to find those. And now we're adding in that last piece of D. So if we look at the graphs here on the right, you will see that the original graph is posted in red there, and the blue graph is shifted up 2. So if we were to redraw our 0 line at 2, notice the graph follows the exact same pattern as if it was on the x-axis. It starts at 0, goes up 1, back down to 0, down 1, back up to 0. Okay, so there are 2 different ways to plot the vertical shifts. I like to shift my midline and then plot from my new midline. That's my personal method. The other method is to plot the original points and then just shift the points up or down, however many you need. So on this first graph, I'm going to show you plotting a new midline. On the second one, I'll plot the original points and then shift them. Okay, so on this, I'm still finding all my pieces. I'm still finding A, which for us is 1, and B, which is also 1, and C, which is 0 here. We don't have a C at all, which means we don't have a phase shift, but I'm still going to use the start, which for me, since there's no shifting going on, is 0. My end is going to end at the period of cosecant, which is just 2 pi, because our b is 1, so we divide 2 pi by 1 and we get 2 pi, and our middle would be pi. Okay, because 2 pi plus 0 divided by 2 is just pi. Okay, and then the last piece we have now is d, which is -1. So unlike the C, we don't take the opposite sign here. We take the sign that's given to us, which is the -1. So over here, I'm going to plot. Okay, now normally my A value is 1, but remember I have shifted up 1. So I now have 1 and 2. Okay, -1, -2. I am shifting my 0 down 1. Okay, so down 1, I'm going to put my dotted line. This is my new 0 line. Okay, So from there, I'm going to be plotting the rest of my points. So I said my start was at 0, okay, and then I have pi in the middle and 2 pi at the end. And in between, we got pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. Okay, now remember, if you want to get those values, you can divide this by 4 and it'll give you all of those. Or it'll divide 2 pi by 4 and it'll give you pi over 2 in all your intervals. We're doing cosecant, okay, and cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. And sine starts at 0, which means when we start at 0, we have an asymptote, and then we're going to have a point and an asymptote, a point, and then an asymptote. This graph is not flipped at all, so we're going to shift up from our center line, right? My center line is this blue dotted line there. So we're going to go up 1, which would be at the 0. Okay, and this is my opened upwards parabola. And then from my 0 line, okay, we are now going down 1, which puts us at -2. And our parabola would look like that. Now, on this graph, if I were to plot my original points, do them in black here, my original point would have been at 1, and my original point over here would have been at -1. And if I shift them down, notice they are at those green points we plotted earlier. Okay, so both methods work. You just choose the one that works best for you. Let's look at a second example. Okay, so here we got an A, which is 2. No B still, so still 1 there. No C, so that's 0. And our D value is +1. My start is 0. Oh, I forgot to put my period. I might have forgotten that on the first one. My period for cosine is just 2 pi. Okay, my end will be my period, which is 2 pi, and my middle will be pi again. Okay, so I normally am going 2, but I'm going to go up and down an extra one just to make sure I reach my 1. So 1, 2, 3, -1, -2, -3. And then I have 0, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and pi. 2 pi, sorry. Okay. And I have shifted my line vertically this time, 1. So I'm going to draw my new line there. Okay. And I'm doing cosine. So normally cosine starts on our y-axis at 1. We're shifting up 2. So from my now 0 line, I'm going to go up 2, and there is my point. Okay. Then it goes down to 0, so now I'm back on my 0 line. And then it goes down 2, so 1, 2, back up to the 0, and back up to the top. Okay, again, if you like the other method, that's fine. So if you were to plot your original points, it would be all of the green. Oops. And here and here. Be all the things in green would be your original line. Okay, and then we would shift it up 1. okay, to get those new points. Either method, perfectly acceptable. Okay, so here we have secant, no a value this time, so just a 1. Our b value is 3. Our c value is 0 because we don't have any, and our d value is -2. Okay, so then I'm going to find my period, which is going to be, because it's secant, 2 pi divided by my b, which is 3. And then my start is going to be 2 pi over 3. My end is going to be, oops, my start is 0. I apologize. My end is 2 pi over 3. My start is 0. My end is 2 pi over 3. And my middle is going to be pi over 3. Okay? So I have 1, 2, I'm just going to go up 3, -1, -2, -3. And I end at 2 pi over 3. My middle is pi over 3. Then I have pi over 6. So that's pi over 6. This pi over 3 is 2 pi over 6. And 3 pi over 6 is pi over 2. And then we have 2 pi over 3, which would be 4 pi over 6. And my new center line is going to be at -2. Okay, and then I shift my graph up and down 1. We're doing secant, which is opposite of cosine. And cosine at 0 is normally 1, which means I'm going to go up 1 from my center line and have a point. Then I have an asymptote. And it's going up. Okay, and then on the next one, I'm going to go back to my center line now, and it normally goes down. Okay, so it normally goes down, and I'm going to put, from here, I'm going to go down 1 to the -3. And then I have an asymptote, and this parabola opens down. And then I have a point at the top, so I'm going to go from here up 1 to -1, and then I have I drew something in the middle. So I plotted an imaginary point. So I'm going to erase and redraw that part of my graph there. So I had pi over 6, pi over 3, pi over 2, and 2 pi over 3. And let me redraw my line out there. Okay, so at pi over 3, I'm going to go down 1 here to the -3, and then I'm going to have an asymptote, and then I'm going to come back up to the -1 and finish drawing out my picture. Okay, and so that one there would look as follows. Okay, here we do have the phase shift included, so I'm going to make sure I go over this because I know a few of you missed class. Okay, so we have an A value of 1, a B value of 1/2, a C value of pi over 4, okay, because this is our C. We take the opposite of the sign in the middle. and then a d value of 1. So our period, since this is cosine, is going to be 2 pi divided by 1/2, which would be 4 pi. Okay. Remember, you flip the fraction and multiply. Our start value is going to be our c divided by our b. So our c value was pi over 4 divided by 1/2, which was our b. Okay, which is 2 pi over 4, or pi over 2. Okay, if I'm going to flip it over here, pi over 4 times 2 over 1 would give me 2 pi over 4. So you can see that. Okay, that was my start. And my end value will be my start value plus my period. Notice the base is not the same, so we need to make it the same. So that's 4 pi over 1, trying to get it with a base of 2. So I multiply by 2, so I get 8 pi on top. So I'm going to get pi over 2 plus 8 pi over 2, which equals 9 pi over 2. That will be my end. I'm going to do my middle over here. To get our middle, we add together our start and our end, and then we divide by 2. So pi over 2 plus 9 pi over 2 gives us 10 pi over 2, which is 5 pi. So 5 pi divided by 2 is going to be our middle. So I'm going to come down. Normally this is 1, but because I'm adding a 1, I'm going to go in either direction, plus or minus 1 there. So -2. My new start is pi over 2. So I'm going to have pi over 2 here. And my new end is 9 pi over 2. And my middle is 5 pi over 2. Okay, to get the pieces between those, we would add together pi over 2 plus 5 pi over 2. We get 6 pi over 2, which is 3 pi. And then we divide it by 2 again. So 3 pi over 2. Notice we added 2 each time, so just add 2 to 5. We get 7 pi over 2. Okay, and then I'm going to add in my shift, which is at +1. So this is my new center line. And we're doing cosine, which normally starts at 1. So if I go up 1 from my center line, it would be there. And then it goes down to, oops, I put my dot not at my start. Let me fix that. Put my dot at my start, which was pi over 2. And then down to the center line, then down 1, back up to the center line, and back up 1. There would be my shifted graph. So that's both vertically shifted and horizontally shifted. This last one, I would like you to please try for yourself and see how well you do. I've left a packet of problems just practicing graphs, and we will go over them on Wednesday when I get back.